Hi everyone, welcome to the Carchat podcast. And with me today, I have Jimmy Broadbent. Hello.
Hey Sam, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Welcome. Can you tell the audience a little sort of short summary, sort of who you are, what you do?
I'll do my best. I guess that the easiest way to describe what I do is I'm a YouTuber. I make content on YouTube around sim racing and racing. A bit of real life karting in there as well, but of real driving. Hopefully more of that this year as well. And I also am a commentator and presenter. So I commentate for Gran Turismo and the FIA GT Championships. And before this all started with the pandemic, I was all around the world. Now I'm in a basement somewhere or a shed. So I like everybody else, I guess.
I remember, I don't know how long ago it was now, but I've sort of seen you on YouTube for a long time, making videos about games and stuff like that. And then I was playing Gran Turismo and I heard your voice. And I was like, what the hell is going on here?
My brother said that. He said he was going through his PlayStation. He goes, I just can't escape you. Just popped up. I'm like, sorry. It's quite thrilled to hear those things. But, hey.
Yeah. Okay. Can we sort of go back to the beginnings-ish, I guess? How have you been a car guy forever? How did you get into all this?
Oh man, okay, so if we're going to go all the way back, I mean, one of my earliest memories as a kid is watching, I believe it was Damon Hill, because it was very, very blurry, of course, but watching a Rothmans Williams go around the circuit, and I remember just being completely entranced by the Goodyear logo on the side of the tyre going around. For some reason, I was like, I thought that was amazing. I love that. So that's what my whole basis for liking cars is on, is watching a wheel go around. But since then, I've been super into pretty much every form of motorsport, especially old school touring cars. I used to watch a lot of that, and my granddad as well. And F1 through the ages, more recently in the last more like last 6-7 years into endurance racing as well. And through all that, I thought, I wish I could do this. And I was like, wait, I'm quite poor. I can't go and do these things. So I bought a cheap steering wheel and did it online instead, and played a game called R Factor, which is quite an old simulator now, but that was really up there for the time. And then thought, maybe I should show my mates. Maybe they'll be interested in doing it too. So I recorded a couple of little videos. My first video is me driving around a circuit called Scuba in Japan in an ep.87 and doing an awful job of it. I look back at it, I'm like, what is that? Is he drunk? Like, what's going on there? And then just from there, I kept making videos. I didn't really take it seriously until about 2016 or so, when I was unemployed due to some mental health problems. So I thought, I might as well keep myself busy and do something. So I just made those YouTube videos, and somehow it transformed into this.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Back then, like when you started, were you streaming or were you recording and uploading?
So I only ever recorded, because back then I didn't have the internet to do streaming. You have to have fairly decent internet to do that, and I had, I think, about 5% of what was required. So there was no chance whatsoever. But I started streaming a little bit at uni back in like 2014, around there, and got the bug for it. But then I sort of got a job and moved on, and then of course sort of had my problems in 2016, and then I thought, well, here I am again. And then I went back to streaming, but mainly it all started with just doing videos, because that was easy to do.
And was that using I guess back then, were you on a PC or on your PlayStation, or a mix of everything?
Oh, it's always been on PC for anything video content creation wise, because when you have a PC, you can just sort of go and find a program and download it, and you can do stuff kind of for free. When it comes to like a console, you have to buy something called a capture card, and that's usually like 200 quid. And when you're in between jobs, 200 quid's a lot of money, and not really something you can just splurge out on. So it's always PC stuff for me.
Because I was looking into streaming stuff recently, and it seems to have come along quite a long way since, I imagine, definitely when you first started out, with everyone having like multiple computers. I'm using a small capture card at the moment just to connect up my camera, because that was an easy way of doing it. But it seems like it's massively intensive on your computer to stream and game at the same time.
It can be, yeah. I mean, I've got this beast of a PC. I mean, I bought it about a year and a half ago, and back then it was like every top end bit of kit I could have in there is in there. And even then, I stream at 1440p. And I think it's like 8K, which isn't much in terms of bitrate, but to be honest, YouTube can't take too much more anymore anyway. And even then, even with the beef PC, like it can't take it entirely. So ideally, I would have two, but I haven't got the room for two PCs, so one PC will do it. But yeah, you've got to have some pretty crazy machinery to do that. And then, I mean, calling a capture card expensive after thinking what the PC is just seems like a bit of a, a bit wrong.
Presumably, your setup has evolved quite a lot since the beginning days.
Oh yeah, I mean 100%. In fact, I have a steering wheel just off camera. This wasn't on purpose; it's just where it ended up. And this steering wheel right here is worth more than my entire setup was when I started. So it's got a bit crazy. I think it's fair to say. This when this came out retailed at about I think $850 or 900 quid, something like that. It's a real life Momo room with like a really cool button box.
I think it's got like carbon paddles and stuff.
Yeah, it's ASMR. It's
nice.
Gorgeous. It's fantastic. But yeah, it evolves, and it started off as a sort of a plastic wheel, a Logitech G27, and we called that the clacker because it just had this really weird clacking noise whenever you're going through a corner. And then as time went on, I got sponsorship from a company called Kissingville. There you go, just a little plug for them up there. Yeah. They basically supplied me with pretty much an entire rig apart from direct drive wheel, which I have in front of me here. Because when you have a rig like this running, this rig isn't made to run with anything apart from like the high end stuff. So you sort of find yourself in this weird situation, like, oh, my rig's so good, oh, I can't get to just a bad wheel. It's a really weird situation. But so for about 2 years, 2-3 years, I've run a direct drive wheel now, and you can't really go back.
Yeah, well, that was going to be one of my questions because I've been slowly over the years, I guess, like yourself, but in no professional capacity whatsoever, have bought various wheels and have gone. Yeah. I can't remember what the first one was. I had it for my PlayStation. It was awful. I remember it just being.
Is it a Mad Catz wheel?
Awful. Yeah, I think it might have been.
Yeah, it's like the square bottom on it and like the weird curve at the top. I used to have one of those.
I think it is. And did that one have like a little joystick on it? I can't remember.
Yeah, on the side of it, like a little stick. And my one broke. I had mine when I was like 5 years old, 6 years old. It broke within a couple of weeks. So I used to sit at the end of my bed and pretend it was a race car with it.
Yeah. And then like evolved through the years into various things and had a bunch that broke. It seems to be a consistent theme that wheels break.
Yeah.
I had a lot of Thrustmaster ones of varying types.
Nowadays they do okay. I've not had major reliability issues with a lot of wheels, and despite what I'm saying about direct drive wheels being like, oh, amazing, like some of the fastest guys in the world use the wheel, the Logitech wheels that I started with, and they'll kick my ass any day of the week. So, it's definitely gear doesn't make talent.
Okay, how quick would you say you are versus other people? Any idea?
Okay, so I think, let's say on a 90-second lap. Compared to esports guys in the same car and the same setup after a bit of practice, I'd say probably about a second a lap slower, maybe a bit more. The esports guys are basically RF1 drivers, if that makes sense. They are just insane. But then again, my excuses are I've never gone down one road. I always just do everything. Yeah. So I'm sort of a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. But I think I'm all right. I'm not at a professional level, and I never want to be because I ain't got that sort of time. But it's I like sort of where I am, like as I think a decently quick gentleman driver.
Nice. You've and like all decently quick gentleman drivers, you've actually done some you've appeared in some quite big esports races.
Yeah. I mean, we've just in the last year or so. It's been kind of crazy. I mean, I've been in the virtual Grand Prix for F1, which people would say is probably the biggest esport event that's happened. But my personal favourite, and the win that I literally have a big, I can't really show you, but I've got this big picture on my wall of it. It's the one I took part in the 24 Hours Le Mans Virtual.
Oh, I remember this, yeah.
For the Marla team, the Aston Martin. And I drove with Rob Wickens, Ferdinand Hasbergs and Kevin Rotting, who's a esports driver, And although we didn't do very well, it was just amazing to be in that field and drive round and sort of be part of that and speaking to the real drivers about their experiences. That was the best thing for me. But yeah, I mean, it got to the point where I had I don't it feels like a horrible to name drop, but I had an F1 driver slide into my DMs and say, "Hey, do you want to come and do a race with us?"
Oh, nice.
I was like, "Yeah, all right." Like, and I'm there just like, yeah, okay, but that was pretty mad. So, but yeah, there was a lot of stuff that went on, and you got quite stressful after a while. You're getting pulled around a lot, but it was still a lot of fun to have the opportunity to take part in those races.
Yeah, and what's it like doing a 24-hour endurance race? But is that race set up differently to how you could just generally go out and do a 24-hour race on your PlayStation or computer?
I mean, usually a 24-hour race has quite a lot of demands, like on equipment and sort of servers and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I've lost count how many of those 24 hours I've done. I've done a lot of sort of 6 hours as well. And usually the only difference is you run with a team. Well, when you're driving on the PlayStation, I don't think there's any sort of functionality to actually run as a team yet. You have to sort of like quit the server and then new drivers come on. It doesn't quite work properly. But so for example, you can have in iRacing, you just have your teammate come into the lobby. They jump basically in to spectate your car, and as soon as they get out, you get into the pit lane. They have an option to drive.
Oh, okay.
And then what it does is, the virtual mechanic just chucks you out, puts the other guy in, and then away you go. So I think that's the only difference, really.
Yeah. Have you run into? Because I imagine maintaining a stable internet connection for 24 hours, as much as that sounds simple, I imagine that isn't as simple.
I've only had one dropout in the last, 5 years during a race. I've been very, very lucky. So where I record and do all my videos, I have my own personal internet connection, my own wired connection. So it's only me using it. And so it doesn't really get that much, although I stream a lot and record a lot and upload a lot, it doesn't actually get that much use compared to like a normal house or a normal office. So I tend to get away with it, but not everyone has that luxury. We have a friend of ours who it sort of became a running joke that he would disconnect because he just would every time. Obviously, we lose tons of time, so it's quite frustrating. But at the same time, you've got to laugh at it. And there was one race we did. It was a charity race where he was coming out the pit lane, and as soon as he exited the pit lane, internet went, and he never came back. And I was like, "Well, he's gone."
What happens in that scenario? Is there a way of someone else jumping in the car, or that's it? Like.
There is. I mean, we were playing iRacing there, and what happens there is you get a tow, where like the game sort of simulates you being towed back to the pit lane, and it takes like 3 or 4 minutes. You lose a lot of time, but it's better than being out the race. So,
and presumably in most of these, you're not in the same room with your mates or teammates.
No, I've never been in a room with any of my teammates during any of these races ever. In fact, I think we've never all been in the same room at one time. I've met them all individually over the years, but we've never all been together ever, which is kind of crazy.
How do you communicate during those sorts of events? It's just like what's
we use like a ancient ass program now called TeamSpeak. Discord sort of like is new and the new version of that now, and it works a lot better, a lot more functionality. But we're just old men, so we use our TeamSpeak program. And we just go in there, and it's great because you can you can set it up so it's almost like real life. You can set your voice button to a button on your wheel, like a radio,
push
and
to
be
talk,
like,
yeah.
You can press the button, shout at him, then come back up again. It's great.
Do you get people? Are your teammates like? Can they see your car data and stuff like that?
They can see. Yeah, they can see like lap time. I think they can see your steering inputs, but maybe your throttle input as well and brake input. And they can see your fuel and stuff like that. But we're actually quite limited. iRacing is what we use for the majority of our endurance events, and there's a lot of data that you don't get back because in real life you have a lot of data on alignment and if there's an aero problem or stuff like that. You've got sensors all over the car. You don't really get that as much. In iRacing, it's more just, is the car balked? You're always pointing that way. Yes, it is. That's basically what you have. You have to sort of guess. There was a thing called phantom floor damage, where sometimes you go over the curb you've been taking fine for 6 hours, and suddenly it didn't like it that time, and your you have floor damage that you can't repair, and you're then like down in a straight line for the rest of the race. So online racing has a bit of oddness to it.
A bit of weird stuff.
Yeah.
Have you ever had teammates like not turn up for their stint? Then you can't like.
Sorry, I've got a rooster, by the way. He loves racing. So I know you were talking about builders before, but I've got a rooster.
Nice.
And he whenever he hears sim racing, there he is. He absolutely loves it. So
Perfect.
we've not had people tend to turn up for their stints. We have like we do stint sheets, like these massive spreadsheets
Yeah.
of like with all different sort of timing and fueling and how long we think each stint will take, how long we took for each pit stop. And you fill it out as you go through, and it's really quite an intense, crazy thing.
Amazing.
You see, I feel like this wouldn't be a proper thing without the rooster, because this is how I wake up every morning at like 6 a.m. It's brilliant.
Nice. Is this a common appearance on your streams?
More now. It doesn't like the rain too much, you know. But now the sun's come out a bit. It's a bit more. He's a bit more vocal now. He's enjoying life again.
And he's quite late. It's like 10:15.
Yeah. Sometimes it'll be 1 a.m. He'll be like, "Yo," I'm like, "Dude, come on, man! Like, it's 1 a.m."
Is there a sim race that you'd be like, I absolutely want to get into that one all time, or not really?
To be honest, it's quite accessible now. We have so much stuff going on everywhere that I've done pretty much all the races I've always wanted to do. You know,
Nice.
we won Le Mans. I won the Indy 500, which was pretty cool. I've never really cared about Daytona because it's just a bit of a crapshoot. Just basically it's luck whoever wins that race in a sim. And yeah, I mean, maybe I would like to do like a Monaco and win like a Monaco event, because then I've got the Triple Crown of sim racing, right?
Yeah,
But then,
yeah. That'd be nice.
I'm not quite sure how that would ever happen and how I would count it. I could just go race some AI and beat them and go, yeah, Triple Crown. And that's
On
it.
easy,
We're out.
thanks.
Yeah, still lose somewhere.
I always see the Daytona stuff, and I can't remember who it was. When was that? It was. You will know this way more than me. Was it last year? There was a Daytona 500, and someone punted some off from the pit lane.
Oh, that was Indy 500.
Indy 500.
And
Oh yeah,
it was
sorry.
Lando Norris and Simon Pagenaud, and Simon Pagenaud, I should say. And basically, I think what happened is there was like a free wide moment in the last few laps of the race. He thought that Lando caused a crash, which then took him out, which he didn't. And you look at the replay, he just didn't. And then he goes, right, okay, it's time to murder, and he just goes after him and takes him out, and it's like this massive world stage, two professional drivers. It made news. It was like, what are you doing? Because the thing is, when we do these races, we take them seriously. You know, we take them like, you can't just go ram people off a circuit. That's sort of the difference between the sim stuff and the arcade stuff, where it's a bit more fun. Based. Not to say this isn't fun, but we have a saying that fun is illegal in sim racing. It wasn't a good look, and people still give him the business for it now. Like,
Yeah, I remember that, and it just reminded me of like, I don't know, playing Gran Turismo online, and just someone just steams in, just, that's it. Your race is over, and you're like, what the hell?
Doing that in iRacing is spectacular. We do some fun events sometimes, and because of the damage model now, where like the entire car just explodes when you hit someone.
Oh, nice.
But you also have to be careful, because I have a direct drive wheel here. If I've got my thumbs in, which you really shouldn't have, but sometimes you do, and then someone hits you and the wheel goes, which it will take your wrist. I'm fairly certain this could break my wrist if I had it in the wrong spot.
Okay, I was looking back at your videos, and I came across a video, and it was driving with 100% force feedback.
Yeah, here's me being like, guys, be careful, and then I'm like, right, let's fucking do it up, mate. Sorry, let's turn it up, and it's just, you end up. So that's not really realistic. First of all, people will say, "Oh, is that realistic?" Like, no. I mean, you've driven plenty of cars, Sam. I'm not sure you've driven a car where it's tried to murder you anytime you turn the wheel. But what I like to think it's simulating is like, if you had high aero in an Indy car constantly, that would be what it would feel like.
Yeah.
So it's proper workout, and you sit there afterwards thinking like, what have I just done? What, my body is ruined.
Because was that on your current setup?
That was on my old wheel, I think, which
Was that on a direct drive?
Yeah, it has a slightly higher peak than this one, but Yeah, I think the peak on that wheel was 28 newton meters of torque, which is
which
pretty intense.
which is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, people think, oh, 28, and they think about like a car. Yeah, think about like I don't know. That's like two MX-5s worth of torque, isn't it? I know, it's enough to again. I've nearly had nearly actually broke my wrist once where I was driving a game called Sella Corsa Competizione. There are these things sometimes in sim racing called landmines where maybe the road isn't quite set up properly,
Okay.
and your car reacts extremely to it. So I was just chilling out going down the straight. I was looking at my chat because I was just sort of like on an outlap going down the back straight.
Yeah.
And I went off onto a curb, and there was a landmine there, and my car went flying up in the air like, and my wheel just went like that. And I was doing that, and it tweaked my wrist pretty bad. I had to stop the stream. I was like, okay, well, I'm done now. Like my wrist is messed.
That sounds pretty savage.
Yeah, I've got the wrist of an 8-year-old.
Well, you must have quite beefy wrists and shoulders now, playing with a lot of racing with the direct drive wheel.
Well, this is the funny thing. I've recently been doing a bit of training for some racing coming up this season, and I sort of have a trainer helping me out.
Yeah.
He goes, okay, well, let's see how you do with this exercise. And all the arm stuff, I crushed it. Anything related to arms and shoulders, I was really good. I just had really tiny legs. And he was like, okay, well, you're okay up here, but we've got to sort the rest of you, you know.
Yeah, I remember I went in ages ago. Actually, it was to go and try out someone's sort of pro-ish sim rig. They did like a training session alongside it and all this sort of stuff. And I remember the first thing I sort of felt as I got in the car and the wheel was set, the force feedback was set at like 300% of what the reality was for that car. And immediately I was like, well, guys, I've driven this car in real life and it feels, and you're literally trying to break my arms just coming out of the pits. But then we did one of those, went into their gym and they're like, oh, there's a pressure sensor, like weighted pedal. And you press it and you're like, I can't press that hard. You get in the real car, and I didn't realize this was a thing, but when you press the brake, your body moves forwards. So you get the entire weight of your body that then goes through your leg. So it's not, when everyone says like, oh, you know, you've got to be able to lift, I don't know, some stupid amount of kilos with one leg. It's nowhere near that in real life.
No, I guess not. I mean, we have, I say we, I'm not part of this company, but Schissingveld have a pretty beefy brake pedal themselves. Like, so I used to run a set called the Ultimates, and they were designed basically for F1 drivers, and people who drive like prototypes and stuff like that. And that brake pedal was 130 kilos, I think, for full.
Yeah.
And you can, I've tried it. It's basically you just smash it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, ah, and then off again. So it's not comfy at all. And when you go for a walk afterwards, you've got one leg bigger than the other. But so I only run like 30 or 40 kilos in this brake because.
I mean, what's the point? There's no benefit in doing that long term, other than you'll probably smash your knees up or something.
Well, especially because like you have to change the way you make it stronger is by changing like the rubber and the like the spaces in the back on the pedal. So if you're like, oh, I'll fancy go rallying, and then you get to a corner and you're like, oh god, I can't stop. And then you try and do heel and toe and your toes break, you know, like. So.
How have the different bits of software? I guess this is one thing, and then a gear changed, because I think everyone at home who's not got a setup of various levels is always wonders what's the difference between the levels and what you could sort of expect back from each level.
Yeah, I think that, well, I tend to think of like, you know, sort of high-end, medium and low-end sort of thing. And low-end wheels, I said like maybe like a T150 or like a sort of a Logitech, or the Logitech sort of like in the line between sort of low and medium nowadays. But those are sort of gear-driven wheels, and you can tell that by the way they react. So, you know, when you're in a car, the steering is quite smooth and there's not really any notches or anything. In these Logitech wheels, it's like a when you're driving, so you can sort of hear the differences and you can feel that when you're driving. But that does also mean you have almost like a dead zone in some spots, like in between the cogs, so to speak.
Right.
Then you have like belt-driven wheels, and they are a lot smoother because there's no cog there at all. And that's like your T500s, your T300s. Some Fanatec wheels are belt-driven as well. You know, all the ones before the podium were all belt-driven, and they be a bit stronger as well, and that'd be made better, a bit more expensive. You know, Fanatec wheels were like 800 quid back then, and this is before sim racing sort of had its boom.
Yeah.
So 800 quid for a bit of equipment, you think, oh no, screw that. And you have your direct drive ones, which are very much the intense nerd wheel, or you're a professional driver. I'm unfortunately the the former, and
They're both now.
Professional. But yeah, so this is the wheel. The reason why you go for this sort of wheel is mainly response time over strength. It's how quick it can give you that the feeling of the wheel, and how kind of smoothly it delivers it. So and that's when, when I said the Fanatec wheel was 800 quid, that was like 800 quid including the pedals. This on its own, this wheel is a Simicube 2 Pro. I think it retails at €1,200.
Yeah.
And that's without. This is the quick release, that doesn't come with it.
So you don't even get a
There's
wheel,
no wheel
with that?
No, nothing. No, you just get literally this block of murder,
A
I like to call it. Yeah, and that's all you get. And some companies also make you pay extra for an emergency stop, which I think is terrible. I think they should all have emergency stops as they come.
Yeah, because you'd think that's like basic safety, I guess.
Well, here's a terrifying bit. They say, we recommend you put it down by your legs in case you mangle your arms so you can hit it with your heel. I'm like, all right. Like, luckily that's still working for now. So.
Yeah. With the direct drive wheel, because I have a Fanatec Club Sport something at the moment. And that's belt driven, and that can only turn a certain number of ways, or it can only go so far, and then it hits lock stops. With a direct drive wheel, do they do the same, or can they keep spinning?
They'll just go infinitely.
So if you had long hair, you wouldn't want to get too close to your wheel.
I think that's a genuine thing, actually. Or one of my favourite videos, I shouldn't laugh because it's not very nice. So someone had a wheel like this. So, it's quite... Oh, hello, webcam's can't focus. I'm still here. Hello. So like this. So it's got these nice big edges on, right?
Yeah.
And it was someone's girlfriend who got in the rig and was like looking at the... Oh, man, this is pretty cool. And then it calibrated. So it went like that and smashed her. And she had like blood running down her face. And I was like, oh, my God. But... yeah, I mean, it can go infinitely, but what you can set it in the software to have bump stops. So you sort of set a center index point. So here is 0, and at 540 that way and 540 that way, I want it to hit a stop.
Yeah,
and then it does that, and the motor goes okay, and just whenever you get to that point, so you don't bounce over it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That in itself, I guess, starts to lead on to a question I had about it, because I've still. I've just played on consoles, and my pedals have got slightly more expensive, and the wheels got slightly more expensive. But I'm in the middle of putting together a PC setup. I'm missing the PC, which is a key ingredient. But that is on order, and that is the next step. But the level of how easy is it to set these things up? Because up until this point, I've moved to PC, and I imagine it's relatively similar. You just plug in and you play. But does there get to a point where it gets more complicated than that?
Well, first of all, I want to preface this by saying that I'm the world's most incompetent man. So, but even so, I managed to set up this entire rig and all that. When I put this rig together for the first time to get it starting, it took me 9 hours because I did one of those things where you read the instruction, okay, and then you miss a page and you go back and you're like, oh, I've got to do it all again. I did that like 3 times. It was so bad. The thing I would say that it's not quite as easy as plug and play. A lot of these things have software that run them. For example, this wheel has a dedicated thing called, I think it's called True Drive or something like that. And you can go in there, and there's like 50 sliders to play with. Luckily, they gave you some presets because I've got no idea what I'm doing, But otherwise, and say plug and play, this thing has 3 wires coming out the back of it. One of it to connect to the PC, and 2 for the 2 power sources it needs. I actually ran it once without the second power source by mistake. And I turned into a corner, hit the curb, and the power went through it, and then went, actually, no, I'm off now. And I went, and then just went flying off to the side because the wheel turned off, which is good. Pedals also as well, you can do a lot of tuning. So I've spent probably the best part of 3 or 4 hours just messing around with the pedals, all the angles and getting it right. Because if Niels was here right now, Niels is the boss of Schissingveld, but it's over there. he is a massive nerd when it comes to like pedal angles and how everything should be and travel. He sent because we're building another rig for racing this year, kind of away from here, and he sent me diagrams of how it's to be set up and specific angles. And I'm like, okay, I ain't going to do that. I'm going to go back to someone who actually can do this properly. But and even when you've done that, you have the software, so you can dictate like the curves of how the throttle and brake comes in. So, for example, for my throttle, I actually have quite a lazy response at first, and then it picks up at the end. Brake is the complete opposite.
That makes sense, because it also, well, with crappy pedals, it takes some time to work out whether you've pressed them or not, and you have no idea. But then I guess as it goes up, do your pedals have feedback?
They don't know, but they're all load cells. So every pedal is a load cell, and what that means is it helps you sort of build the muscle memory a little bit better. So you sort of know. I found with the pedals that aren't, that you just sort of flop, and you go, okay, I'm here somewhere. You don't really know where they are, and also put into that, a lot of pedal bases flex slightly.
Yes.
So if you're braking hard, or even braking a little bit, and the plate starts to flex behind it, then you aren't actually getting the proper force. You're getting less than that. So you'd think by knowing all this, I'd be pretty good at racing, wouldn't you? But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to carry over. But yeah, this is why. And if you're really serious about like being quick at sim racing, that I would always recommend getting something like this, like an 80/20 rig that is just made out of metal.
Yeah.
You know, and it does not flex. Your bones will flex before this does. Which I think they probably have in the past. So.
that is one of the things I've looked at, and I think I've ordered. It might be the same one you have. P1X from.
Oh no, I have
a different one.
I'm all just involved, baby. I'm taken. I'm spoken for.
Okay. But I remember like looking at it and going, okay, well, if I'm gonna build one, I want it to be solid. Like it needs to be solid, because I've even just messing around previously. You've done that thing exactly where you press the brake pedal and then like stuff bends.
I mean, yeah, that is important, and that applies to any rigs. I mean, even if you're out there rocking Logitech wheels, then I think it's always worth trying to put it in a place where there's going to be no movement, because by default those things clamp to desks. And like, I don't know about you, but I tend to grip the wheel fairly hard when I'm trying to get it into a corner. And I go, oh wait, I'm moving down the desk now, you know. So yeah, I think it's always good to hard mount stuff if you can.
Yeah, and then you end up, because I was looking at what I need to buy, and I haven't bought one yet, because I ended up with a we don't ship to anywhere other than the EU. I was like, oh, touche. Thanks.
Wah, wah, wah.
But yeah, you need to buy a racing seat or a seat, and you're looking and you're like, I just want a seat that sits, and then like, no, you basically have to buy a racing seat. What's that about?
Yeah, that's what happened with mine. I remember my emails back in like 2017 now being like, do I need a rate? I mean, I've had this seat for like those, you can tell this is a well-worn seat, this thing. But it's a I say cheap, it's 150 quid, which is still a lot to spend on a seat. You have to use it, 'cause that's what it's made for. It's made to use the bolt-ins on the side mounts. So for the Praga rig that we made, we've had to get a tillet seat, one of those sort of really tiny like the screamer ones they're called.
Yeah,
it's 600 quid. Oof. We have to because we have to get the seat position right, otherwise there's no point, you know. And it's one of those things where you can sort of justify it because it's going to be content and it's going to be cool, but at the same time it's like, that's a lot of money for a fucking seat. I could buy so much of that money, like,
to sit
why am I buying a
indoors?
seat? I know, like it's nicer than the seat in my blooming time attack car, which is really frustrating to me.
yeah. But guys, when we're not racing in this, can I just?
I'm actually going to think about swap, because they're the same seat, but for some reason they sent me a carbon fiber one. I didn't order a carbon fiber one, because why would I do that to sit still, you know? But they sent me one, so I'm going to do a little cheeky swap, I think, and put that one in my car.
Yeah, why not? I'm sure no one will notice. It will be fine. So okay, yeah, let's talk about that. So you are going to be racing a Praga.
Yeah, racing. I've got two things this year. I got the Praga, which is going to be my sort of actual first steps into proper organised racing, which is, well, I say that I did Club 100, which is run very well, but you know, it's sort of rental karting versus
what's Club 100?
Racing a racing car. Club 100 is an awesome karting series here in the UK, where basically you have detuned Rotax karts. And it's super competitive, because it's basically you turn up, you pay your money, you haven't got to do anything, and and you go out and race karts for half an hour, and the level's actually really quite high. I went in expecting to sort of walk it because sim racer, and that was my first mistake, thinking that that translated into karting, because karting's very different from anything else. And it took me until my second season to get on the podium, and then even now, it's like I think I had a race, one of my last races, I probably should have won, but I made a mistake and got a penalty, and I was like, yeah, okay, great, good progress, and then it all stopped. So, but yeah, that was really good to learn racing.
Yeah.
Because in karting, I'm not sure how much karting you've done, Sam, but you learn that people aren't very nice. It's not like sim racing where everyone's a gentleman. Like, well, most people are, but like, not so much in karting.
That's quite a funny comparison, because sim racing, I think a lot of people's experience of, I would say, arcadey sim racing is absolutely the opposite. Like, you just punt into everyone and everything. Yeah.
Well, I think like in normal sim racing, everyone's very aware of like how easy it is to crash, because you have the added sort of risk of netcode, where like the computer goes, oh, we thought you were there, so you got bashed off the circuit. That happens quite a lot. Everyone sort of gives each other that extra couple of inches or inch or so,
Yeah.
In karting, like, no, they're on you. They're on your guard. They're smashing you through. And it took me a long time to get up that courage to be like that in the kart, because there are a couple of times where you're lapping people and you're being too nice, and you're like, I'm losing time here. Well, you know what? This is my corner now. And, the old-fashioned block pass, where like I'm coming through and we're both slowing down. Yeah. But that took a while to work up to that after doing sim racing for so long.
Yeah, I've not done much karting, and I've done every now and then I'll go with some mates and have a race or whatever. But like not, I think I've probably been 6 times in total or something. And yeah, at the beginning you're a little bit scared of like what's going on, and then by the end it's just like you very much just like, I'm coming through. I don't like I'm not going to punch you off. I will try not to punch you off, but like you need to acknowledge that I'm coming through.
You have that a couple of times. Like, I think the idea is you put your cart up the inside, and then from there on it's their problem. That's basically it.
Yeah. You can't go through me, so that's your problem.
But yeah, I mean, I am looking forward to it though, because it's a massive challenge. It's going to be probably one of the biggest challenges I faced in my life in terms of getting ready for it. And so I've been doing a lot of training physically, which has been odd because I'm used to being the stereotypical nerd, really. But getting fitter as well. Starting some neck training as well, because these things actually pull some G in the corner.
Yeah. Have you, and you haven't driven... Have you done anything with downforce or anything remotely that quick?
I drove a Radical.
Yeah, which one?
It was an SR1,
okay.
I think it was.
Yeah.
But that was in the wet at Brands Hatch, so and I also spun it.
That must have been quite fun.
It was fun.
And scary.
The thing is, because I spun at T1, I went over the crest in the wet and braked, and the rear snapped.
Yeah.
So I was doing like 90 mile an hour when the spin happened. And all I was thinking is, oh, my wallet, because I was going flying towards this wall. But luckily the gravel sort of saved us, and that was good. But after that I was a bit more careful, but as you can probably imagine. But it got a bit dry, I started to heat up a bit, and I started to feel the start of a little bit of like what I thought downforce was anyway. And then the day was over. Yeah. The thing is, like, the idea was to do a ton of testing sort of end of last year, but
here we are.
Yeah. So I'm sort of going in quite new, but I'm ready.
No, it'll be wicked. Funnily enough, I have crashed a Radical SR1. It was my car at turn 1 at Brands. This was a brake bias issue. Essentially, the car was built like crap, and it was impossible to get the brake bias anything other than heavily rear bias.
Okay.
So I just dab the brakes as you go over. There's like a little bump. There's like a hump just before the corner. Yeah. I'm just over that, and I just touch the brakes, and that's it. It's like pulling a handbrake, and I just span into the inside of the corner.
That's exactly what happened to me, but I missed the outside. I missed the inside and went just off.
Oh,
the
nice,
gravel,
nice. Because I was like lucky. 60, 70 into the wall backwards. God, it was savage.
God. Yeah, that's a lot worse. But the thing is, we look back at the footage, and I was like, Jimmy, the problem is that on lap 3 in the car, you tried to outbrake the Pro Drive. I was like, oh no. But I was like, oh, I'm sorry, because the problem is that people go in with a certain expectation of you.
Yeah.
When you say, oh, you have to, because I don't think, oh, you'll be good because you've done sim racing, or so you go in with that expectation of yourself, and then when you don't fulfill it, you try and fulfill it, and then you do something stupid.
Yeah.
But,
And I imagine with those sorts of things, like you've done a lot of laps of that track in the sim world, possibly in a similar car, possibly in the same car. And they're reasonably close in terms of like the braking points in each car and all that sort of stuff. So you will have an idea. You'll be like, no, I need to be braking at this point because I know this is what this car can probably do.
you do think that, but then in the sim, there's very rarely wet weather.
Oh yeah, that's a
So you get
hugely
that's something
different.
that I had to learn from scratch in karting was the wet weather. Luckily, I had a really good teammate, a guy called Steve Brown. He does it's called Super GT on
Oh yeah, come across him.
on YouTube. Yeah, he's very talented in the car, and he sort of taught me, like, you see that shiny bit where the dry line was. Leave that bit alone, but it's not even that. It's not as sort of cut and dry as that. It's like different surfaces have different levels of grip, so you sort of have to find out every corner, every bit of circuit. You have to go and just scope out which has that grip on it. And when you find that little bit of grip, your lap time goes, oh, there's another half a second gone. It's quite addicting when you're not in the wall.
I think my first time in the wet on a track was one of the most terrifying things I think I've done in a car. Because you just, up until that point, all you've got experience of is the dry. And then you translate that directly into driving what is the dry line, not the wet line, in the wet. And it's like straight up ice. It's like, it couldn't be more like ice. And you just suddenly like, but this track, I'm just driving down it and suddenly my car's going sideways. You're like, I don't understand what's going on.
In 2019, I went over to Assen for 3 days of driving in a 1 Series. The one with the straight six in it, so it sounded nice and went pretty quick, which is nice. And 2 days were in the dry, and it kind of went pretty well. And then 1 day was in the wet, and it was, again, odd to sort of move those and translate those things. But I was quickest by about 5 seconds. So, it's all right. Sorry, I can't resist to drop that one in there. But the thing is, I had ABS and the guys didn't. So that's why I was like 5 seconds quicker. But it's hard to get used to when it's your first time in. I remember going out in that session when it was wet and just being terrified.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to die. I'm going to crash. I'm going to spin. And then you do 2 laps. It's like, oh, okay. I kind of get it.
And once someone's explained why it's so sketchy, where it's so sketchy, then you can start building that like mental map of how you might starting to attack it and where it might be slippy.
Yeah, I think that's what people like. The mistake I made is I went out thinking there is no grip. I'm going to slide off everywhere, but there is grip. There's quite a bit of grip. You got to just go and find it, and that's sort of the challenging part of it. But yeah, even when you do have a slip, it's not the end of the world. And that's something that sim racing has definitely, like, I definitely picked from sim racing, is how to react, like the reaction time, the automatic reaction to move it. Because I saw a couple of people have spins and they just they freeze up and just hit the brake pedal.
Yeah.
And then obviously you just go off. That's it.
Still turning into the corner.
yeah, and they just sort of like move at like a lateral angle towards the barrier, which is. But I find that like because of sim racing, I sort of know, right, okay, bit less than the throttle, try and recover it, and then try and come back on again. Because mashing the brakes is the worst thing you can do in that situation. But that's something I wouldn't have learned otherwise, as well as heel and toe. Actually, I learned to heel and toe in sim racing. I never did it in a real car, and then I went to a track and raced that BMW around, and I was doing it on the first lap like it was easy.
I find heel and toe on a sim setup unbelievably hard, and I imagine this depends on your setup and how it's all done versus in real life.
You got mechanical feedback in real life, don't you?
Yeah.
So when you get it wrong, you get a big like screw you from the. Oops, sorry.
And a bill.
Yeah, but there are actually mods they have in sim racing as well. They called it the grinding transmission mod. That basically you did it and you hear, and the car wouldn't go into gear.
Okay.
Because some people, what they would do is they just tap the clutch a tiny bit, and then like people try and game sim racing a lot to go faster. But if you're doing it properly, it's clutch to the point of engagement, then do your shift and get it through. So that sort of kept people in check, and that's sort of how I learned to do it. It's just the rhythm. The rhythm was the thing you had to learn, I think. Once you get the rhythm down, I think you're okay.
Yeah. No, that's impressive. Seemed so, obviously you've done the hours and all of the like a reaction. I imagine the first time you probably had that before. You've been on track before, but like the first time you catch something and keep your foot in it and off you go, you're like, oh, whoa.
I thought I was a hero. I was like, oh, what have I done? Oh, did anyone see that? Wow. In reality, it's just this little, this little tiny slide. But yeah, that happened quite a few times in that Bimmer at Aston because it was just wet, so you could do these big old drifts, these big old slides. And I thought, oh yeah, I must look really cool right now. Then you see the lap times go down. Like, oh, okay, I'll stop that then. But it's it's kind of it's nice. It lends some credibility to all this racing. I wouldn't say that sim racing fully prepares you for the real world. I mean, I say that the best analogy that I've heard someone come up with is that it's like the song, right? You know the rhythm of a song, but you don't know the lyrics. That's sort of what it's like going to real life racing from sim. You sort of know what you should be doing and how it goes, but you don't know all the intricacies.
Yeah.
And those are the things you need experience and time to learn. You can't get that from a sim.
With this, with this Praga, what is the car you are racing, and how much are you going to be racing it?
It's a Praga R1. A little baby prototype is how I tend to describe it. 2-litre turbo. I think it's a Formula Renault engine, or it used to be at some point. And on the highest map, I think it runs about 380 horsepower, and which is quite a lot anyway. But then when you consider it weighs under 700 kilos without a driver in it,
This is really quite fast.
yes, yeah, no. I remember when I was on the phone, he was sort of talking to me about it. A fella named Mark, who's running the program, and I was just like, yep, okay, yep. This sounds like an LMP3 car or something, It combined with that, it has quite a lot of aero as well. I think they had a completely redesigned aero for this year. Quite driver friendly, central driving position as well.
Oh,
so it really is a little prototype,
That'll be sick. Do you know what sort of lap time it should do around, I don't know, Silverstone or somewhere like that? Just under 2?
I know Donington National because I've been sort of researching that a lot and doing it in sim, and we reckon about a 106 or 105 round there, and that's without the loop.
And what does that compare to other stuff? I don't really know Donington.
About, I think, roughly the same as a GT3 car. It depends on the circuit.
Yeah.
Well, the Praga will struggle a bit on the straights, but in the corners it will walk all over anything. So, like Brands Indy, stuff like that is where I think it'll be quite strong.
Yeah, and then if you do those sections, have you driven this car yet?
No.
Oh, okay. This
Exactly.
would be awesome.
So, I mean, the idea is that basically this month and everything running up is I'm going to be like doing the full program in this time.
Yeah.
So, but what we've been doing to prepare is just we have our own built version of the car in sim, and we've been just every day I'm on that trying to get just some sort of bit of information.
Yeah. What software are you running with that?
So we're using a sim called Automobilista.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Which is, you might think, oh, that's a bit of a left field thing, but it's one of the more adjustable sims, and it actually is if you have someone who knows what they're doing, tweaking the back end of it, it's probably one of the closest things you can get to actually feeling what a car would feel like in terms of steering force and stuff like that, because we have this direct drive wheel. So it's good. I'll have to show you a clip of it sometime, but it's getting very close to sort of how it is. Like we watched an onboard lap and we sort of compared our lap, and the way the car moves in the high speed sections is the same as the onboard lap. So
that will be a very interesting, I imagine, for you the first time you go somewhere that's got some high speed stuff, like whether it's brands like full GP circuit. That's a great one. That I can't remember what the corner is called, maybe Hawthorns or something. Which will be
the fast right at the end of the straight.
Yeah, it'll be like a
that'd be mad.
fifth. Probably.
I don't think we go to the GP on the on our calendar. We go to Indy.
Do you do Silverstone?
We go to Silverstone. Yeah, we do Silverstone. So
okay.
Maggotts and Beckett's.
Maggotts Beckett's
fun. Cops.
Yeah.
T1, whatever that's called nowadays. I don't know.
T1, I imagine it's probably flat.
I think it's like a
slight
small
lift or something.
Yeah, it's something like
Depending
that.
on weather.
The one I'm most scared of is the Carrera Curves, because it's like just flat and you're turning left.
That's going to be interesting.
So like, you know when you get to that point where you have that little bit of slip going into a corner. So instead of turning, you're turning the other way before you get to the corner because the car's
Yeah.
doing that. So that's the bit I'm nervous for. But the thing is, when you see it and you see it on board, you go, oh God, how am I going to do that? But then when you get into the car, you get all that information plumbed into your body,
Oh,
for actually sitting
100%.
in the car. I think it'll make a lot more sense.
If your sim is really damn close, you'll basically be there. It's just going to be the mental component, which will be huge. The first time
It is, yeah.
Obviously, you step up. That was the thing I think that got me the first time. The first time I drove my SR3 at Silverstone. What's that corner past the second set of pits? It's like a blind, fast right.
Oh, that's cops.
Yeah, cops.
The old T1, yeah.
Yeah. That, although there is tons of runoff, in a 3, and I imagine it will be similar. Although no, because you've got more horsepower, so you might have to slow down. But in an SR3, you turn in under power, but you can't see around the corner, and then you lift halfway round, and depending on how much grip and whatever. And I think I was driving around, going through that corner maybe 15, 20 miles an hour slower. And then my instructor went out and was like, well, this is what you can do. And I was like, okay, but I'm not. He was like, but don't.
My brain.
But don't just go, okay, well, I know it can do it, so I'm going to do it 20 miles an hour faster, because maybe it can't on that day. Maybe your line's slightly wrong. Maybe your inputs have been slightly, all of that sort of stuff. But you just slowly build up, and psychologically, you have to swallow some brave pills the first time you nudge it up that extra couple of miles an hour. But it's an awesome feeling.
That's kind of the thing, isn't it? It's kind of the thing is that you have to. I hate this phrase so much because people say it to me all the time. I was like, yeah, I know, but it's like, oh, there's no reset button in real life. That's like the favourite phrase of anyone who doesn't like sim racing. I'm like, yeah, is there not? Oh, I did not know that. Thank you for letting me know. But I'm, of course, very aware of that fact that if I go out there and I spin and put this thing into a wall, it's not just like I can go get another one. It's like that is, what's this car worth? Like 150 grand, something like that, And I'm thinking like, oh, and that's there when you're driving. It's like, it's a lot of money, Jimmy. Shut up, and you have to sort of push it out your head a little bit. But when you're driving these downforce things, it's just, it's kind of like that, and you have to make sure you're so precise into the corner. We used to do a ton of racing in iRacing in the Audi R18 LMP1. That was our car we drove for like 2 or 3 years. Exact same thing in that. It's just right, turn in and hope the car does the thing you think it should do, but of course without the voice in the back of your head, which means turning in is quite a lot easier actually.
The price thing might be there, and it will be there, but in the heat of battle, I think it will probably go out. You'll be aware of it when you're near other cars, like really near other cars. But I think the major one will be you want to save your ass. Like if you're going to one of those really high speed corners, let's say I know you're not going to Brands, but Brands, Hawthorne, that corner, you've got like 5-6 meters of runoff, and you're going 130 miles an hour. So
big wall there.
You're aware that, okay, the car might be damaged, but I might be really damaged if I hit that solid object.
I never thought of that. Like when I've done any track time at all, I've never ever thought of like, this is like, oh man, this is it. This is going to hurt. Apart from afterwards, because it happens on my first ever race in Club 100. There's a circuit called Lid here in the UK, and I got just pushed off. Like I was just trying to get round. I was new. I was trying to like understand what's going on, and I was on the outside line. This guy just comes in and goes, pushes me off. Like there's no reason to do it at all. And before I knew it, I was like in the tyres, like ow, like why, And then that was interesting. Also funny to that I was trying to record my voice with my phone, so I had my phone in my suit, but I didn't have my suit was sort of open like that. And in the crash, my phone got ejected. And I was like, where's it gone? And the marshal said, is this yours? And gave me back my cracked phone a bit later on. I'm like, thank you.
You're not meant to carry that around.
We don't tell anyone that.
No, I think I'm very aware. I think my thoughts go sort of, am I going to die? That's like first. And then when I realize I'm not going to die, it's how big is this bill going to be? Like that's basically the thought process in 0.1 of a second, and then it's waiting for the impact, which may never come because you might just somehow miss the solid object, but it's just like, oh, beep.
That's 100% what happened to Brands for me. but without I didn't think about my injury at all. It was just like, oh man, this is going to cost me some money.
Yeah.
And I remember just going off backwards. All right, I've got to just nail the brake pedal and hope we slow down. 'Cause
Yeah.
I've no way I can bring this back. And then the relief of hitting the gravel and being like, whew.
Yeah. And it's not. I think for me, it's definitely depended on. I haven't had many accidents over the years, but I've had a couple, and there've been some that have been more notable than others. One was like a video game crash. It was like absolutely ridiculous. It was another SR1. SR1 sketchy car.
I've heard
Driving at Cadwell Park in the wet on the normal tyre. They've now changed it to a wet tyre. And Cadwell Park, and this is something that obviously it does appear in some sim games now, but just pools of water in various parts of the track. And I'm driving behind someone, and it's essentially like getting a fire hydrant hose into my face. But I'm like, okay, I'm going past you. This is happening. And then I realize that I can't see anything because there's multiple fire hydrants spraying everywhere. I lift off a little bit, and then I hit this patch of water. The car takes off, like just lifts up off the ground.
You just glide,
Aquaplanes,
don't you?
yeah. Turns left, and right near the start finish is an entrance for a marshal to come through the fence. So the fence has like a little gap in it. And next to that bit that sticks out was a tiny mound. And it must have been like 3 centimeters or something. Like really small. But I go over it sideways, and the car takes off, and it goes up over the barrier and lands on the barrier, and then slides like Tony Hawk 50-50 style down the barrier, and then falls back onto the track, luckily the right way up. I don't know, 5 miles an hour faster or something different, I would have gone straight over the barrier into a bunch of trees and all sorts of stuff. That was quite dramatic, that one.
Yeah, that sounds pretty intense. But I also think, you've got the best radical trick shot at Cadwell. No one's going to ever top that.
No, true. And amazingly, that video was one of few times I'd recorded something in a 360 video, 360 with a 360 cam. So there's a 360 cam on the car, and you can watch it, and it's all a bit janky when you watch it, but you can see the bonnet come off and fly like 30 foot in the air, and you can like watch it go like like that. It's
my word.
Yeah. So that after that, I decided the SR1 wasn't for me, so I bought a faster, quicker car in the SR3.
That's how you do it, man.
But that 100% is a better, more stable car. And if you drove them back to back, ignoring the performance, and I think the Praga will feel similar. Like it'll be fast, but it will feel really stable. And because it's made of carbon, it won't twit. You won't get like, I was talking to someone about this recently, but like they're saying the Radical, it can twist a little bit under high speed, the downforce and stuff. So the downforce can be slightly variable at high speed when you're in a corner. Whereas when you move to like an LMP or something like the Praga, because I think that's carbon tub, isn't it?
Yeah.
You won't get that twisting, and your downforce remains consistent. But those are the sort of things that you like. I'd never thought about that until someone who's an LMP1 driver was like, "Oh yeah, you'll find that if you drove something with a carbon tub, it's like slightly less iffy."
Yeah, that's kind of mad because there are all these little things now that people are sort of telling me like that you would never ever think of.
No.
Like we were talking about like adjusting downforce on this sim version of the car, and it was like, okay, well, we have 2 options, either the wing or the rake. I was like, what do you mean the rake? It's like, well, the wing is physically further up in the air. I'm like, oh, okay, and
Yeah.
it sounds silly when you say it out loud, but you never consider it when you're actually driving.
Yeah.
And, I've learned more about how cars actually work in the last like month than I have for the last few years because I'm actually sitting and listening. Cause I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in that. I should probably know.
Yeah, and then
what's going on here.
Do you then go back? Because I go out and I do a bit of gaming and whatever, and then I do some real life stuff, and I listen to real life coaches, and then I watch some videos and whatever, and I sort of try and piece it all together. Do you come back and then adjust your cars in your sim games? Do you do much setup changes? And now, for example, rake, will you look at rake and be like, oh, I might have a play with rake and see what happens?
Well, it sort of started looking at it properly when we won Le Mans back in 2019 because we're trying to make our car as quick as we can down the straight. I know, yeah, there you go. Thank you, everyone. Let's drop that in there. It's still one of my sim racing highlights, definitely. But we were trying to make the car as quick as we can make it in a straight line. Because obviously that matters there, but also have it actually work. So we're trying to make it sit down at high speed. So and again, make sure that rake isn't there. Make sure it's just it's flat. And we came out of all sorts of different solutions to that, like sort of some dampeners that's a little bit softer, so it will come down a little bit. But then, of course, we have to then make sure we aren't losing too much speed in the back end of the course and the curves where downforce is everything, you know. So we eventually came up with this weird mix of rake and wing angle, and it ended up with us, you know, being one of the quickest down the straights and then sort of as fast through the twisty stuff. So I think that was a big factor of, because that helps more than just lap time. It helps lapping people because you can get by quicker. You know, it helps if you are fighting just to overtake someone, because the straight's the easiest place to do it, and if they can't keep up with you, that's easier, you know. So a lot of those things I think are very similar to real life racing when you think about like how are we going to do this the most efficiently as possible, you know, and I think that's what sim racing teaches really well.
Yeah, and it's a really good way of being able to practice these things that in real life to practice would be very expensive and take a lot of time and all that stuff. And you can just play. You might have an idea. You're like, okay, actually, I want to soften up the front. Like, want a bit more grip in the front or whatever, that sort of thing. Or at least an idea of what's going on when your engineer suggests maybe we do this. You're like, oh yeah, okay.
Well, the problem is it's usually just like, just go and drive better, Jimmy. You know, go and drive better. So something that really cool that we've been doing recently, and this is like super nerdy and I love every moment of it, is that we have a driver trainer who's come on board. He's a sim racer too. I don't want to name him just yet because he's not sort of like an official thing, but he's coming on board to help us out, and he's also done some driving with, you know, sort of F3 drivers, F2 drivers, and we're starting to use Motec in the training for the Praga. That's just so we can see every input that I'm making and how it affects the car. So initially, I've always had this bad habit in sim racing. It sort of came from the LMP1 of like not having a very sharp brake, but having like quite almost like a soft brake to 70% and then trailing off very slowly so I can sort of regen on the brake pedal. That's part of going fast in that car to have the hybrid. But when you're in a car without hybrid, a downforce car, you have to initially hit that brake really hard and then come off it quickly. And what I was doing was hitting it not very hard and coming off really slowly. And you could see, like in the curves compared to like the quick guy, like here's what you should be doing, here's where you are. And just seeing that physically, you go, okay. And you go to the next corner, and you go, I'm going to hit it really hard then, and you lock up all four wheels and go off. so you've got to really like you've got to sort of taper it a little bit, but it's good to sort of have someone show you that this is where you can be faster, because I feel like in racing, in sim racing anyway, I'm sure it's the same in real life racing, a lot of people don't like being told they can be quicker if they do something different. A lot of people like to think they already have it down. Separate the ego and you've got something to learn. You can go out there and go a lot quicker, you know.
Yeah, and you can try it and you might not be faster or whatever, but like when you look at the data and you've got someone else doing it better, you can just see the time. I was talking to someone, now I wouldn't be surprised if this is all connected, a guy called Scott Mansell. I don't know whether you have anything to do at the back end of this, but he is talking to someone at the moment about developing some software for pulling more data out of all of these things. He does a ton of driver coaching and stuff like that. And I thought that was super interesting because I want to be able to compare the data, and then also one of the things they're doing a lot of is teaching people how to read data as well, and then getting your reference laps, because that's if you don't have a reference lap from someone, what are you comparing your data against? Because they might go, it's all in real life, which is actually probably one of the things that's so amazing about the sim is, in a sim, everything is identical each time round.
Yeah,
whereas
definitely.
in real life, the conditions are slightly different. Like your tires might be slightly more worn, the air temperature, wind, blah, 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 blah. All of the driver excuses that you can get out there mean that the lap, it's only comparable when it's on the same day, the same time, same car, same everything. You can get it vague thing, but to get it 100%. Something that I've wondered, when you look at, let's say I'm on Gran Turismo Sport, for example, and I look at the fastest time someone has done on a certain track in a certain car, it is always like some obscene amount faster than me. Okay, that's probably just I'm awful at it, but like it always seems to be like 8 seconds or 10 seconds or something like that faster. When you're like, I don't understand. Like, I'm not that bad.
Have you ever watched one of the laps back?
Occasionally.
Because you can do that. You can do that in GT Sport. You can go and look at the Ghost. And so I know quite a few of these guys because, of course, doing the commentary
Yeah.
and whatever. And it's basically a matter of every corner being as perfect as it can be. And that might sound like a stupid thing to say, but let's say I go out there and I do a lap and it's 2 seconds slow, and I go, I don't understand. I was on the limit everywhere. And then you see every corner he inches away by a little bit because he's just using that a little bit more speed for the corner, that a little bit more exit. And that's basically what that is. It's just you're going out there and you're maximizing every time. And that version of driving doesn't really exist in real life because you don't have that many retries.
Yeah.
You can't just, take the car back to the pit, start again, and you don't have that much time to do that. You'll find that your best time comes at a time of day that suits it, as opposed to, when you finally get it right. So, but the precision it takes to do that, because it's not just, you have to imagine like the brake pedal, although it isn't, 100 inputs, imagine it on a percentage just to dampen it down. Yeah. And every time you go into the first corner, you've got to hit 82% on the brake pedal to get the maximum braking. And you've got to trail off in a specific pattern to get maximum rotation. That's what they're doing every time. And they hit the brake every time, 82%, 82%, 82%. And that's what separates like the esports guys from us mere mortals, because I can't do that. I haven't got enough feel in my leg to do that. I sort of admit to driving a lot by feel rather than markers a lot of the time. Like I won't say brake at the 200. I'll just go, right, that feels right, bam, 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 and usually it's okay. But then these are the guys sort of like, right, there's a marker, but I'm not braking at the marker. I'm braking at the third link in the chain fence after the marker. That's how it is. It's these, and they'll put in hours a day. And there's a driver. I think it was it Josh, a driver called Josh Rogers, and I think it was him. But they're putting in like 8 hours a day of practice. Yeah, I mean, so when you're slower than them, don't worry about it. You aren't going to beat them. I think that's why I'm just a piece of it now.
Yeah, I think that was it. It's accepting, and then also I'm sure, and this is a classic driver excuse, but there'll be things that are quicker in that game, or there's a certain car and a certain setup on a certain car. Can you download people's setups?
A lot of the time, yeah. I know on F1 2020 they sort of made it so you had to share your setup in time trial, which is sort of nice because it means it's just down to the skill of the driver then, not the skill of the engineer, which is not really what F1's about. But hey, yeah, every game has its intricacies. We used to call iRacing trail braking simulator because any car, any track, trail braking is the way to go. Doesn't matter what you're doing. RF2, R Factor 2 turned into this thing where they sort of went, oh, slip angle's a thing, but they don't know how much slip angles. So they just went, and so you're going through the corner in the Porsche like sideways, and this is the fastest way of doing it. It's like, no, stop it. They all have their little bits and bobs to them. So it's kind of, you'll find that esports drivers will only ever have one sim that they are best at. If there's someone who's doing two or more, they are. No, don't go anywhere near them. They are above you. Don't even talk to them.
How do the different games compare? Not necessarily from how you drive them, but because I've not played. I think I've played R Factor maybe like once or twice. Versus, how would you say? What's the differences between them all? Some must be significantly old. Like iRacing, I feel like that's like vintage now.
It is vintage, and that's sort of one of the running jokes, is it runs on an engine from like 20 years ago. The thing is, the amount of updates they've done and sort of workarounds to keep that engine alive and working is pretty incredible when you think about it. But I'd say a lot of the sims handle quite similarly, and then there's iRacing. That's how it's always been. iRacing's now starting to come a bit closer to the rest of them, but it seems they went in a different direction very early on and sort of stayed in that direction, whereas the rest of the sims sort of went with a more natural tire, I'd say. Whereas iRacing, only in the last year or so, has finally got to a tire that can actually take slip without spinning or heating up and blowing up. So the way you drive an iRacing is super precise. There's no sliding at all. And I remember I used to do this championship in GTP cars, like a Nissan Group C GTP in IMSA from the 80s. Those things with like 700 horsepower. And those things move a bit, and if you did that in that car, dead straight away. So like it does change the experience somewhat.
Yeah. What do you think is the most realistic?
Oh man,
or is
see,
that
this is
difficult?
I get asked this at any time I do any of this, and I feel like whatever I say, there will be a group of people at my door with pitchforks
Yeah.
saying you're wrong, get out. I'd say in terms of what it's like to actually go racing and be in a race series and have it taken seriously, I'd say iRacing is that. Like it's very organized. You have to have a certain license to drive a certain car. You can't go around taking the mick or you get DQ'd, sort of thing. It used to be that RF2, I think, RF2 had the best tire model. It seems they've dumbed it down in recent years to make it easier because it was at the point where the tire model was so advanced that no one could run it. The PCs,
Okay.
like they couldn't run the physics required to make it work. So outside of that, I think your best all-round simulator for like most things is probably Automobilista, the one we're using to develop in
Okay.
Praga, because I think we can get so close in that so easily compared to in iRacing or RF2 that there's not really much reason to develop it elsewhere.
Yeah, because that's and that part of it I think is quite interesting because I look at various people offering sim setups and I'm sort of deciding. I think ultimately I will buy R Factor, iRacing, and try them all. But you talk to different people and it sounds like the setup, like you can pick various starting points, but the setup is where people seem to go mad into it and charge loads of money to get it to feel like and it's always like it's just set up to one car.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like this is the odd where sim racing falls down a little bit. Is you're setting up one rig to drive a Formula One car, a rally car, NASCAR. These things can't be any more different, and yet you have to drive it all in the same way, in the same rig, on the same tire. And it gets tricky. And also, that we suffer a lot from the old cognitive dissonance in sim racing. My one's better than yours because I put money into it and I spent money on that. So, as someone who's played everything forever, every sim has something unique and good to offer over something else. Apart from Project Cars 3.
I'll admit I installed that game and played it once and I haven't played it again, and I don't know why. I think, well, no, I do know why, but it was not what I was looking for in that game, so I wish I'd known that before I bought it.
It was just a bit lazy, really, but that's how it is.
What are you looking forward to sim and game wise in the upcoming future?
I don't really know. We don't get many releases in sim racing. We just get DLC every now and then. So I don't really know what's coming for iRacing. I don't know what's coming for RF2. I actually try and keep a little bit out of the loop because I found that I was having sort of developers say, "Hey, we're doing this thing. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to do something?" I'm not a news outlet, Like I'm just someone who enjoys racing. So I try and actually take a bit of a step back from that. But I don't know really. I'm looking forward to seeing more advances in VR. VR is one of my favorite things to use on sim. I don't use it much because I record a lot and it's really hard to record with.
Okay,
but
yeah.
For like actual seat of the pants, you're in a car sort of thing, VR is the closest you can get to being in a real car.
That is, I tried the PlayStation, whatever that one's called, PlayStation 4 VR.
It's called PlayStation VR.
Well, there we go. Yeah, PlayStation VR. And I played it with GT Sport, and for about 20 minutes, it was like the sickest thing. And that's a good word. That I tried just as an involvement. It was just another level, like massively stepped up the level of involvement and everything. You could look into the turn as you're sliding and all that sort of stuff. And then I realized I was about to throw up. And
that is a thing.
Has that changed over time with the tech? What are you running
I'd say
and playing with?
it's more in a personal thing. I have see if I can grab it. I have a McLaren edition.
Oh, nice.
Vive Pro, which it's been through the ringer a bit. It's been used a lot. They sent me that to do a review on it, and I said I liked it, but it cost too much. And they never liked me again. They didn't talk to me ever again. So, but I'd say the thing is with with this headset here is like resolution is quite important, and how smooth the head tracking is. If you have a jerky head tracking, so yeah, imagine I guess if you're listening to this right now that you look and it's delayed by like a quarter of a second each time you move your head. That's gonna make you sick very quickly. So this is really good for that. I'd say like it depends on the person. You get your sea legs after a while. That's basically the same feeling. So because I was very clever and I have a massive galaxy brain, the first thing I ever did was try Dirt Rally with VR. And I got half through a stage, I went and threw up. I got sick, and then after that, I just sort of took it easy, like you should. There's a big warning saying like, don't do this if it's your first time in VR. You will be ill. I'm like, nah, I'll be fine, mate. Sim rate, and then like obviously just ill straight away. But then you take on circuit racing and stuff like that. My first proper experience was driving like an F4 car at Spa in AC, Assetto Corsa, and you come round La Source and. I mean, you know it's downhill. You know it's downhill in 2D, but you don't know how much it is downhill. And then you see the road drop away from you, and in front of you, Arouge and Radion just snaking up the hill, and you're like, oh my god, this is. And you approach it, and your stomach does the thing where you're like, I'm going downhill, and you go over the crest, and it turns as you go over the top of it, and then you realise just how realistic this is because it's fooling your body. Your body thinks it's going through this right now, and that's why you get sick.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of do it a bit longer and then teach your body that, sorry, mate, fooled you. And it's okay.
No, it's definitely a step up. So winding back really quite a bit, at what point in time did you start getting involved with Gran Turismo?
Oh, that was really kind of a surreal moment for me. That was back in 2018, and I got a DM through Twitter.
Okay.
And it was like it was someone without like a profile picture saying like, do you want to do some Gran Turismo commentary? That was based like what they said. There was no like official thing, and I was like, I thought this is a scam, right? Because I don't know about you, Sam, but like every day I get people offering me scam deals every day. Like, come be part of our network. It's got to the point now where even my Clips channel is getting the scam emails, which is hilarious to me. I sort of, I'll respond. So yeah, sure. What's the deal? And they go, okay, well, we'll send over a contract. So I sent over this contract, and I read it through. I'm like, oh, this is real. Like, this is actually like a real thing, bloody hell. And it was to go and do commentary at their first World Tour event, which was at the Nürburgring. And the thing is, this was back when I was still sort of making my way, I guess, at the start of my career. And I remember I was shaking reading this. I was like, oh, this is real. This is mad, right? Because they looked at my channel and thought, he'd be a good commentator. And I thought, well, why? Because I used to do some commentary back in the day, like 2015, 2014, but I stopped because I was doing other stuff instead. What I think actually happened is they ran out of people and they needed people to come in. And they needed people to like, I was down the list somewhere and they grabbed me in there.
It might be good.
And I went over and I did the job, and I remember again just being absolutely like just terrified because they like, right, you're live now.
Yeah.
Doing live commentary, and you have to talk over something. And I was thinking, I've got a plan what I've got to say. So I was writing down these notes, what I'm going to say, and I didn't look at them once. You just do it ad lib, and that worked a lot better as it does the commentary. And then after that, I thought, well, that was really nice, really cool experience. I got to commentate for Gran Turismo, I got a GT shirt, nice, went home. And I got an email about a week later saying, okay, we want you full time. We want you to do this. And I was like, oh, really? Me? No fooling? And ever since then, I've been, the British commentator. And then in 2019, they didn't tell me about this, of course. They went, oh, you're going to be on the desk now, in front of the camera. Like, so you're going to be like presenting the show. And again, it's like, yeah, all right, yeah, okay. And that was terrifying. That was really sketchy. And I remember stumbling a few times on the camera. They've been really patient with me, and they've sort of allowed me to grow into the role as a presenter as well. And now it feels like now I miss doing it. I miss being out on the stage. There was a time at the start of last year, just before everything sort of hit, we went to Sydney, Australia. There was a live crowd of like 300, 400 people there. And they go, oh, Jimmy, go up on stage and talk to them, will you? So I'm up there with a stick mic talking to this crowd. And like, the weird thing is, to me, is a lot of them know who I am.
Yeah.
They all know me. And I'm like sort of talking to them and tuning out, making jokes. And like, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh God, this is horrible. I hate remembering this. But where the business is happening, you're doing it. And it was very surreal to be doing those things. So I used to suffer a lot from anxiety a lot in the day. So it was it was nice to get out there and do it. And then of course it all stopped.
Yeah, you must have got so much out of that, like that whole like talking to tons of people live. Because I know there's one thing which is making videos to a screen. Like we are right now, we're making a video to a camera or whatever, and there will be people listening, but no one's live, sort of thing. That's very different from standing up in front of a bunch of people. I've done a really small amount of live stuff with an audience, and you're like, ugh. But afterwards.
Yeah, you feel like a bit of a boss afterwards, don't you? But it's the first time I did it, I was aware, like, am I sweating? Am I shaking? Those sort of things. But you sort of got used to it after a little while. You get used to sort of what the pressure is, and you sort of the whole idea, I think, is to try and make your body not go into like an alert state, which is sort of what you're in when you're up there, because it's quite a high pressure, it's high anxiety time. So the whole thing is sort of making it so normal that it's fine, And then you start realizing. At the start, you always think, "What am I doing with my hands? What am I doing? Where am I going to put them?" And then you sort of you find somewhere that's comfy, and then you just sort of go with it, and then it's easy. But it does take time to get there, definitely. But this is the worst advice. If you have like some sort of crippling anxiety, like I used to, if you go out there and just do that stuff, and even if you do it badly, then you've done it, and it makes you feel very good.
Yeah. Are you a much more sort of confident person out and about because of doing these things?
I'd say so. I'd say like I'm a lot more. I'm not afraid to talk to things, or like I used to be one of those people at restaurants where I used to hate talking to the waiter sort of thing, But now that's all like in the past, distant past now, because you sort of have this confidence is the wrong word, but it's just like you're assuring yourself that you're not doing anything silly. You're just being a human being, and as soon as you sort of get into that, it works a lot better. Like especially when at events and stuff like that, it was at the point a lot of people would come up and talk to me. And say, "Oh, Jimmy, great to meet you," stuff like that, which is, again, still something that's very surreal to me, to be recognised in public and have someone want to talk to you. You sort of realise, well, that they're happy to see you, so be happy to see them too. And then as soon as you sort of get over that hurdle of thinking, "Oh God, leave me alone and let me go back to my little cave," it's quite enjoyable.
I definitely used to be a little bit like, if someone was annoying me or something, my friends will say this is an absolute lie, but I won't necessarily the most vocal people if someone's messed up my coffee in a shop, or I've ordered food and it's wrong, and you're like, "Oh, I don't really want to say anything," and then just nipping away at those over time, you realize that, like, well, one, no one really cares that much, like, about all of these issues that you have, and if you can just crack on. No, that's really cool. So you did this commentating stuff, and then you've been involved in game as well. I remember doing it was like one of those. Do you get medals or something in Gran Turismo Sport at some point for different?
Oh yeah,
the tracks.
so
it was the tracks.
So the majority of that is Tom, my co-commentator. He does the voice for that. They call him the voice of Gran Turismo. They have him speak in this really quite business-like way. I always tease him for it. But I'm in like the start of the game, like the trailer. So when you have the trailer, like you can hear the commentary that we have over the World Tour events. That was pretty cool. Like being like, "Oh my God, I'm in a Gran Turismo game." This is someone who's obviously like loved every of the games that's come out pretty much. So that was pretty nice. But outside of that, I've not really been in any of those things. It doesn't really interest me to be in a game. Because I feel like that's one of those things where it's like, "Oh, I'm in a video game." It's like, why? Because you have a YouTube channel. Yeah, that's exactly why. Like, there's no other reason, So if I was in a game for like a productive sense, I would like to do it. But I don't like being in it just for the sake of
just being a character in it, sort of thing.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where it just doesn't age well, and in 10 years' time you go, "Who's this guy?"
Yeah.
Like
he was famous back then. Like, oh. Okay.
He wasn't famous then either.
They thought he was famous back then. So when do you think we're going to see? I guess you probably don't have any more information than I have this. I don't know. Gran Turismo 7, I thought we were going to have it pretty damn soon, and it seems to have disappeared.
Honestly, and I get asked this a lot, is they don't tell me anything.
Okay.
I could ask everything for them, and they would just... I remember I asked what the possibility was of getting a PS5 because of Sony and stuff like that, and maybe they're like, "Go buy it." What he said to me,
I can't.
I like it. I actually have two. I bought one. I had the opportunity to buy. I had the opportunity to buy two, so I did, and I bought one for my girlfriend. Okay. I was going to go and give it because she lives in Spain. We don't get to see each other very often right now. So I thought, I'll get her a PS5 and we can do things together because she's never had a new console before. Yeah. So I thought, it'd be a really nice surprise. And now I just have them both here because I can't go and give it to her or the PS5. So that's sitting in there at the moment. But yeah, so that's going on. But I don't even play it. There's nothing to play on it. No, so it's just there looking like a very big Wi-Fi router. So like, oh, nice, cool.
Yeah, I think that's how I've sort of felt about when it got released. And originally I was like, well, the only thing I really want to play is some racing games, maybe the odd something else. But all the games that are out at the moment, a lot of them are on PS4. And then you're like, okay, well, Gran Turismo is not going to come out for another year. It's like, okay, well, I'll wait.
Well, you can play GT Sport on the PS5, but it's not much different playing it on the PS4 Pro.
Yeah.
So
Same.
why? I mean, it's like pay loads of money to have nothing come out. So, but I guess that's what hype is, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll get
So
there. At some point in time during all this, you bought a GTR. Wait, do you have two GTRs?
Yeah. It's pretty ludicrous actually now that I think about it, but yeah. So back in 2019. I bought my Skyline. It's an R32. I bought that off Jan Mardenborough. He used to belong to. He also
That's
does
quite a
Gran Turismo
fun
stuff and.
Person to have got it from.
Yeah, he took me out in it and showed me what it could do, which is pretty fun. So I bought it off him, and I've had that ever since. I've just now got it back from having a completely new engine put into it. It's a HKS 2.8 stroker now, and we're still running it in at the moment, so no crazy boost or anything, but we're hoping for about 600 horsepower or so from that.
Okay, and what was it before? 300-400 or something?
When I first got it from Jan, probably maybe 300. Then I put new turbos and a new ECU, and it was 380. The thing is, 380 is plenty. And this is the thing: you chase a number, and I already committed to like the plans of going further at this stage. And I was driving around 380. I'm like, this is really fast, like for a road car, And they're like, oh, let's like another 200 horsepower in it. Why not, And then that was then backed up. But when I bought the GTR last year, it was sort of like, you have the lockdown purchase. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I'll treat myself. And I was like, I'll buy a GTR. This is stupid. So I bought a GTR, which is, again, I don't know why I do these things to myself, but I know I'm sitting there. You're probably thinking, what a spoiled git saying all these things about why you do these things to himself. But for me, like, but I've always loved cars, and I've always loved Japanese cars, and I've always loved GTRs
and Gran Turismo.
So I thought, and Gran Turismo. So I had this opportunity to go and actually go and own these cars. I'm like, oh yeah, it's great, and it's amazing for the first month, and then you're like, wait, how much does this cost to maintain? Yeah. And you're like, oh gee, what have I done? Like for example, it went to the garage recently because one of the bearings I think near the bell housing for the gearbox failed recently. So it still works okay. It just vibrates like nothing else. I was like, I'll send you a bearing. It won't cost too much. Got in this and oh yeah, it's £800, please, including VAT. I'm like, what? Come on, but yeah. So I have those two. I have a 350Z. That was the car I had before any of those. Nice, yeah. Big old trumpet car. I love that noise. I have my original Mazda MX-5 that I bought in 2014, which is now a Time Attack car.
I saw a picture of this. I was just looking through it, and I was like, wait, hang on a minute. Is this a road car? What is this? What is going on?
No, it's not a road car anymore. It's if it were a road car, it'd be the ankle splitter 3000. It's got a massive splitter on it now. So that's running a 1.8 litre. It's a Frankenstein engine, really. I think it's like a head from like a BP4 head, I think, and then like a 1.8 block from like a modern, or I say a more modern MX-5. Yeah. It's still like 2000s, and that makes 350 horsepower. And that's going to have a sequential gearbox mated to it as well. And we're gonna have a bit of fun with that one. It's going to be that's our other racing series we're doing this year. So we've got Praga and then Rusty Box with Splitter. Similar,
What is the Time Attack scene? Because I've only seen Time Attack videos from America. Now, obviously it exists here as well. But what does that look like? What does a Time Attack event look like?
This is the thing is from Time Attack, and I wouldn't want to say anything bad about anyone, but I think they think that their brand is better or bigger than it is in the UK. Because if you go to Time Attack, you go to YouTube, type in Time Attack UK, you'll just find people's onboards with like 300 views. Yeah, and the occasional like put together video where it's taken off like stream footage. Yeah, and it looks bad. So like I've sort of my idea is that one, I love the idea of Time Attack because I want to go out there and not race anyone in this car. I don't want it to be hit. Yeah. I want to go and just go quick and enjoy it and have the fun of building a car and making it quicker. That's what appeals to me for Time Attack. I think that I'm hoping that maybe bringing a bit of a spotlight on it with the content that we'll make around it, we'll maybe bring some more people in. Because it seems that like, I mean, the class I'm running, from what I can tell, last year had 4 people in it, and that's Club Pro, where it's like we're a step below the 1,000 horsepower Imprezas with big wings. We're sort of like, and I think is it maybe a step or 2 below that, but so we can't run slick tires. You've got to run like a track tire and stuff like that. But it's been really fun, just sort of like seeing how much we can bastardize this poor little Mazda into something that it was never meant to be.
That's it. 'Cause I look at some of these cars, and I've seen it. I've only seen some events from America, so apologies to UK time attack guys. And they will take something that's possibly was slightly quick at the time it came out, and then put on all the power and all the wings. And I look at some of them and go, they must have spent a lot of money on this. But
I mean, aero's expensive, man.
And then you go, but you could just buy a slightly more expensive car, like let's say you could buy a GTR, and you could go as fast, or are you going nowhere near as fast?
Yeah, I think that like if I took my MX-5 to a track and put it up against a GTR, it would be similar.
Okay.
I think around a lap, I think we'd be quicker in the corners by quite some way, but then again, the GTR would have better brakes and probably accelerate quicker as well, and that's four-wheel drive. That's kind of not what it's about. I mean, if in terms of efficiency, like racing's never efficient when it comes to money. You're basically putting money into a big furnace and going goodbye. What's the old saying? Easiest way to become a millionaire is to go racing as a billionaire.
Yeah. Those sorts of any of those.
Yeah. But for me, it's like it's building this car up and seeing it develop, and then like my personal goal is to have the fastest MX-5 in the UK.
Right.
And I think that we have a good chance of doing that. I think we can probably do that this year with what we've got, because there aren't many people out there doing it right now. But the whole idea is to entice people into it. Come on, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough, sort of thing. And then have a really cool competition. But then we have an argument as to what makes an MX-5. When does it stop becoming an MX-5?
Okay.
And in my mind, it's when the engine changes to something that isn't a Mazda engine.
So any Mazda engine, is that allowed? Any Mazda engine?
I was thinking that, because then it says a Mazda but not an MX-5, because everyone's like, oh, Jimmy, you should do the rotary swap. And I'm like, oh, God, no. Like, if I'm already throwing money into a furnace, this will be just jumping in myself afterwards, like...
787B in there.
Of course, there's, what's it, Mad Mike, I think, has got a 3-rotor MX-5 or something like that. And sounds awesome, great. But for me, like, the whole idea of Time Attack is to make something that is spectacular in the true sense of the word. You see it and go, what the is that? Like, what the hell? I mean, our livery is minty fresh, and we've got some really cool sponsors on board as well. We've got main sponsors, of course, kind of sponsors giving us some support towards the car. We've got KW on board helping us with suspension and getting it set up, and the idea is to have this thing be a complete weapon in the corners, because we're going to lose out on the straight. Because you say 350 horsepower in a Mazda MX-5 is a lot. It's very much. It will scare you, but it isn't 600 horsepower.
Yes, it's a lot less than 600. Even no matter how fast it is, it's a lot less than 600.
I mean, we've got weight on our side. I think we weigh, without me in it, about 950.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Like
that sounds pretty light.
And
you're going to have some absolutely rude boy wing on it.
Yes. I mean, the wing, I think, is actually due to be delivered very soon down to there. I mean, we've got a dual element rear wing, and basically it's built to be as big as is allowed under the regs. So it's going to be proper, like,
Will you have to take it off?
Hang the car up after it's done.
Put it in a transport vehicle.
I imagine we probably would have to. We have to take the splitter off.
Okay.
Because obviously it just scrapes whatever it
Can't
touches,
get up a ramp.
but, we'll have to see, because our idea is to mount it to the chassis. So we'll have to see just how tight we can get it on the chassis before we make it removable or not. Because that's one of the things. If we start having this thing which is removable all the time, then when we put it back on again, it's not going to be in the same place.
It's not going to be as solid.
So
presumably, people have thought about this somehow at some point in time.
We've well, the people doing it have. I haven't, because I'm stupid. I'm just like, please make it so we can do that.
You're the face. And the ideas, man.
I'm the idiot. No ideas here.
Well, that honestly sounds like a lot of fun, and I can totally get behind the idea of going, you know what, I want to create the fastest Mazda MX-5 in the UK. That's in itself, that is a great title. And
well, you're free to come for a ride, because Time Attack says we have to have 2 seats.
I'll ponder that one.
That's a yes. He's saying yes. He's saying yes.
I might see how some of your laps go before I agree to get in the passenger seat of this box.
It's a well secured box. It's got a big old FIA roll cage in it. So if we do roll, then you only be injured a little bit.
Well, it sounds wicked. Sounds wicked. Right. Well, I normally wrap these up with 5 questions. Are you ready?
Oh, hit
Do you
me.
have a most memorable driving trip or journey?
Probably down to Le Mans in 2015. Went down in a very broken diesel ST Mondeo, and it had less power as the trip went on. I remember that.
That is absolutely. I miss going to events like that. At the moment, next question: 5-car garage, unlimited value.
GT40 Mark 1, my R32 Skyline, because it's fantastic and I love it. I would also have, oh my God, an old F1 car of some sort, probably. Maybe an old V10, just so I can go and really ruin people.
Yeah.
I had an MX-5 built with ITBs, so stock power build, pretty much, just a bit nicer suspension. And the last car I'm pulling out my hat, but I can't think of one, probably a K car of some sort, little mini K car to drive around, because they're cute and make little turbo noises. And an F40.
Everyone seems to say F40. It comes on my on my podcast. Right, if you can only drive one car for the rest of your life, and you're allowed a £500 car on the side.
Skyline. I love that thing to death.
It's very cool.
Driving it is the best experience ever.
Is that rear-wheel drive? My knowledge is lacking, or four-wheel drive?
It's kind of four-wheel drive. It's rear-wheel drive normally, but it has, like, when it senses you're losing torque, it goes, all right, sends to the front as well. So if you do like a launch, it's four-wheel drive.
Yeah. Most undervalued car at the moment?
Most undervalued car? Oh, man. Do you mean like me personally or in general?
Sort of like, what do you think in terms of price? Like, what's cheaper than it should be, or... Yeah.
I think the ST220 Mondeo. I bought one for £2,000, and although it was a bit beat up at the time, V6, enough power to have a bit of fun with, get your kids in the back as well. Quite a nice place to be. I think it's one of those cars that will probably appreciate if it doesn't rust.
Yeah. Nice. And final question: most interesting car to you at the moment? What are you googling? What are you looking up?
Oh God,
What's
what have I looked up recently? I don't like new cars that much, really. There was one guy who actually...
Doesn't have to be a new car.
You know the Koenigsegg free valve thing they got going on? He basically built an MX-5 with free valve. And
I saw something about this.
Yeah, that was mad. So like, if you look at the engine bay, like what is this? What have you done? But it looks brilliant and it runs. And he basically just went, you know what? I don't want to limit this here. So all the details for the design you can go get them.
And how did he come up with it?
I think he sort of took the concept and went, how can I apply this to a little 1.6? And he made it work.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Because I imagine that is
really
something
cool.
that they've been trying to sell to other manufacturers for a long time. Because it sounds like genius tech. Like it just...
This guy comes up in this ratty old MX-5. You have free valve, he'd done it.
Yeah, Toyota, do you want this? 50 quid. No, that was cool. And that car that came out in, it was the first car they did no idea how to pronounce it. Jamiroquai. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. They're what names I can't say. But yeah, the J1, I think it was.
No, it's the G1.
J1? G? See that? That's how much I can't say it.
Cool. Well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure. Cheers for having me on.
Great.
Sorry, I didn't bore you too much with too much sim racing nerdiness.
No, it's good. I'm very interested at the moment because I've got literally a pile of bits waiting to be assembled. I'm just missing the key component, which is a computer.
Don't worry about that.
That minor detail.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks very much.